All right, everybody, we are back. It is Kentucky Derby weekend. Roberto, he's out there. Call before you dig. That's what Rob's out there doing. Call before you dig. He's checking your gas lines. He's making sure things don't explode. Is he an American hero? I'm not saying it. Some people are. Thank you to Roberto. He's in the bunker. He's ready to roll. So I brought on a special guest, a young man. He's just got into this horse racing game. He is a gentleman from Kentucky, a sultan, a SWAT. He is the Bambino of antiques, the greatest living author of a book called Betting with an Edge. He's the greatest to ever write a book called Betting with an Edge. That's clear. We know that. He is my friend, my cousine, my buddy Mike Maloney. Michael, it is good to see you, my friend. I like to pull over Under Armour hoodie. I mean, this is you want to talk about dressing up. You dressed up.
Well, I was just trying to match the flow. I saw you, and I thought I'd just try to get somewhere close. I
I'm
can't be.
wearing this for Joe Bags. I threw on my Boston College shirt because he's shout out to Joe Bags. Joe Bags is down bad. Down bad. I mean, it's just tough times if you're a New York sports fan.
Well, and since we're doing shout out to Rob and Rob's dad, by the way, who I had the pleasure of
Bobby.
meeting.
Yeah, bombs away. Hey, are you going to be available this December? It should be when you're not working. We got a ticket for you. Don't worry about it. You just got to get out here. We got lodging and a ticket, Army Navy, with a bunch
No,
of riled up Rangers, Marines, Navy. We got a big setup coming. I got your ticket.
we can definitely talk about that.
Okay.
I got a feeling I'd learn a lot during that excursion. So
Oh,
that
you're
that,
gonna
that
you're gonna learn something. Well, I don't know if it's a lot, but you'll learn something. But yeah, Mike, it's great to have you as always. And I know for the folks listening, they're not listening to me. They want to listen to you, but I'm gonna put it out there that I'm going to put out my pick for betting strategy. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your take, critique it, what have you. But going into the Derby, I know and shout out and a quick plug, not a sponsor, but a sponsor. Bet with the best. Great podcast. Great podcast. You've been on there a few times. One about, talking about just you growing up in the business, which is just a wild story. And I urge people to listen to that. But also, you went on there talking about how you have to approach Derby Day. Because, like I tell people, and you say this all the time, it's different. This is a different day, especially if you know something. It can be a very special day. You did a really comprehensive each bet, what you need to look for in each bet. I've already downloaded the podcast because I'm getting re-upped on it. But what are your thoughts just in general approaching the day before we start looking at this late pick four?
well, first of all, I agree with you on the Bet with the Best podcast. Chris Larmy does a great job,
It's
and there
phenomenal.
are he's had a lot of guests on there, and I've listened to all of them and have learned several things, and just even things that I may have known. It makes me think and reconsider, and sometimes puts me in the right frame of mind. Just listening to other people talk about different approaches to trying to do the same thing that I do. So I do recommend that. And talking about Derby weekend, I'll just lay it out kind of like I lay it out to my friends sometimes. I have a lot of friends that are not degenerates like me that are occasional race goers and living in Lexington. they get interested when Keeneland's running or when Churchill's running or Derby week. And the first thing I tell them is don't get caught speeding, because it's easy to get caught speeding on Derby week. And I don't mean going to the track. I mean with your bankroll. So if you're,
Rob.
if you're a guy that's like $300, bankroll to the track, which is, the guy I used to be years ago, it's easy. You hear a tip on the way into the track, or you love something in the second race and your doubles and your pick three. And, I'll play a small pick five, early pick five. And the next thing you know, you've blown half of that 300, and it hasn't really been a focused bet. It's just been action. It's just been the excitement of being in the mix at the track, and not really having a plan going in, and not really being cautious and trying to protect your capital. So sounds pretty simple, but it really is. It really is something that'll help most players if they just try to be a little more cautious, make it look really, really good if you're going to get heavily involved early, and give yourself an out. If you like horses later in the card, try to keep enough money in your pocket where you can still make a play later, because it's a sick feeling. And I've been there myself, to love a horse in the ninth race, and you don't have enough money to play him like you would really like to when the race comes up. So you try to play an exacta box instead of a win bet, because you want to stretch that money, and then the horse wins, pays a nice price, you miss the exacta, and you got zilch. So that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, and to your end, I mean, if we look at this weekend, like we were talking a little bit before we started recording, and that was like, Oaks Day. It's gonna be rainy. Maybe it's a day where we just watch the track. Maybe it's, well, for me, for you, I mean, this is a business. I mean, we got to talk business here. We stand on business over here, but for me, I may just watch the track. Maybe instead of betting $200, I bet, 100. Maybe I just pick a spot and just bet that. And I have my limits, like in what you perfectly outlined and made it crystal clear was you have to have your limits. Bet what you can afford to lose, because you're going to lose in the long run. Just bet what you can afford to lose. So, that said, I've been saving up. Derby Day is a special holy day in this household. Uh, Kids go to their grandparents, wife allowed to stay, but go to your sisters. This is a special sacred day, Mike, in the Studer household. So, I mean, who's got it better?
I'd say you're in a sweet spot, Stu. You got the kids out of the house. You can focus on your racing. It's a beautiful world.
What does your Derby day at the house look like? I mean, when you don't go, because I know last year you went, but
Well, my Derby life's been three stages. At first, I went all the time. I went every year for years and years and years, and then I hosted a Derby party at Keeneland. Keeneland was gracious enough to give me use of a great room, and I would have 40 of my best friends out to the track, and we would do the Derby from Keeneland, and it was fantastic. We had our own teller and a great view of the tracks and the horse farms around, and catered food, and it was a great time. So we did that for about 20 years, and now for the last 4 years, I'm working from a home office where I'm sitting now, and it's just a really laid back deal. I'll have one or two of my best buddies over, not hard track horse players, not hardcore horse players, but just guys that I went to college with that, we've been friends for a long time, and they like the ponies a couple times a year. They'll come over. We'll have a few drinks, a few laughs, and they've been around me working enough on a race day that they're they know the program, and we have some fun, but I still get most of my work done. So it's a lot easier for me to focus and concentrate, and
I'll tell you,
hopefully,
man, you're 100% because when I can sit down and I can look at my notes and the forms, and maybe I have a question. What was this horse's workouts again? And I can dig into that. Well, what was that replay? Let me take a look at that replay just one more time. And it helps out immensely. I mean, whereas if you're at the track, I mean, you're high-fiving Johnny, taking pictures, I've seen you in action. You're a busy man. It's hard.
yeah, it was fun being there last year, but I'm not in a big hurry to go back.
And I heard the ticket prices are crazy.
They are. They're inflation is everywhere, Stu. If you haven't,
Yeah, no. You don't have to tell me, brother. You don't have to tell me. All right, let's get into this pick four. Now, just overarching my thoughts are I'm I'm arbitraging the pick four into the Derby. So I want to run between 50 and 60% of my plays to fierceness. And then the rest of the 40%, because the tickets are going to cost a little bit more, I'm just going to break it up into tiers, but I want to have at least $1, maybe $1.50 pick four to a horse that's 8-1, 10-1 in the Derby. It'll pay pretty nice. That's what my hope is. Most of my big plays, though, my big bets, I want to have fierceness in mind. I think that's the winner. Spoiler alert. Um, so we'll start with race 9, the American. And I think it's probably the toughest race of the weekend, because realistically, if you look at the sheets, you look at the forms, all these horses are the same. I'm just going to take a stand that Legend of Time is just potentially way better. From a class perspective, I think Charlie Appleby. I'm a big Charlie Appleby guy. I will always bet a Charlie Appleby horse. He has made a commitment to the States. I think he's setting up even a string of a dozen horses to just stay here in the States, is what I heard. Um, he is really getting after the American circuit with horses that he brings over from England that suit the American style. And Legend of Time, even though coming from Meydan, which is not something I normally like, you just have to you have to respect this horse, and I'm going to lean on him um to a certain extent. And but if it's not Legend of Time, and this race is wide open, I don't quite know how I want to structure the tickets, Mike, because I also have the 3, 4, 6, 7, 11, and 13 as if I had to pick uh, a B horse. If we're doing the ABC method, those are my Bs. And look at the sheets. I mean, these horses in this field are very much the same. And if it's not Legend of Time, good luck with who it is. I mean, this projects to be a fast pace. Timeform US calls it a fast pace. So that should suit Legend of Time to a certain extent, but there's a lot of really solid closers in this race that have, closed it. We talk about one of my big angles closing into slow fractions. There's a couple that have done it. and so when you can close into slow fractions, it means that you're very adaptable. You have a turn of foot. There's a couple in here that can do it. Stay hot looks really interesting. Um, Lord Bullington has done it to a small extent. Um, Quite a few. Mike, how are you approaching this race? I'm still kind of wishy-washy. Do I in some just single Legend of Time, um just based on the fact of maybe I can turn this pick 4 into a pick 2 into fierceness, and I can really get live to something really special.
Yeah, it'd be great if we could do that, Stu. But I agree with you that this is one of the toughest races of the weekend, and I think it's easily the toughest race in the late pick 4.
Yeah.
So, or at least the way I see the races. So, uh, in those type of races, it's great if you can find a single. I don't think this is a singleable race, but I agree with you that if I press someone in the race or leaned on someone in tickets that needed to be skinny, the 5 would be the horse Legend of Time. And not that I know that much about him. I'm just not overly impressed by the American runners. They're nice young horses, but none of them really stand out to me. So it's Legend of Time as part of a 6-horse spread, or a Legend of Time pressed in a few other tickets for me. And we had a similar spread. I have 5, 6, 8, 11, 13, 14. So I threw in Agate Road. But I
Are you
don't feel.
concerned about the post? Because I looked at Agate Road, but I mean, just the way outside post, and I am concerned to a certain extent. We got on the Derby Trail, and it's a talented horse. We got on the Derby Trail. Now we're going back to turf. We're drawn at the 14 post. Uh, this horse definitely has some turn of foot, has the ability to run the requisite numbers. Uh, is it going to get the kind of pace to close into? I mean,
I don't know. I just if I'm going to play a big spread in here, I just felt like I needed to include
yeah.
and another thing that I'll do, since I've identified this race as the toughest in the pick 4, is I'll try to find a way to have my top 1 or 2 horses in the other legs, and try to find a way to afford an all in this race, because it's a painful feeling to
Especially
have.
in the first leg. If if you got a single, if you're attached to a single, you don't want to lose in the first race.
Well, and as I've said many times, my past performances as a bettor tell me that I'm more likely to lose in a race where I'm spreading 6 deep than I am. That's more dangerous for me than a race where I have 3 contenders, and I want to eliminate one of those. I'm better off doing that than I am trying to pick 6 out of 14 or something, because if we're as many horses as we're both using, we obviously don't feel strongly about any of the horses, or we wouldn't have that big a spread. So that I don't know that I'll be able to afford to get it into my budget, but I always try to do that with the hardest race in the sequence if possible.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I if I keep it to, I'm wondering what, and we'll get the tickets construction maybe at the end here. I'm wondering if what is your thoughts on having one versus two horses as an A, B, C combination starting off here. Like if we're thinking in that mode, what is your thought?
The ABCs are I think people can use them a little different ways. They can tweak them to suit themselves. For me, in a spread like this, I have 5, 6, 8, 11, 13, 14 as a spread. I just make all those A's. They're weak A's, but I make all those A's, and then I probably have no B's, and the all idea would be my C. And I don't know that I'll be able to do that, but that's the way C's are in these bets. Sometimes is sometimes you can come up with a reasonable way to use them,
Your
and
safety
other times,
blanket.
yeah,
It's your safety blanket.
exactly, yeah. They're savers. C's are savers.
I dig it. I can get with that. I think that's what I'll probably and maybe press a couple tickets with your maybe the 5 or the 14 if you like them, or the 13, or you find that other horse, press them in a couple tickets and then open yourself up so you can, you know, uh, potentially get that $5-6 pick four within your budget, right?
Yeah, my goal with multiple tickets, and going through all this ticket construction like we're doing is the goal is to be able to catch a horse that you didn't really like that much,
Mm-hmm.
to
100%
not
agree.
include it, but to include it on a ticket that can get you home if you're right in the other leg. So that's what we're attempting to do. It's not easy in these bets to get it home, but that's the goal.
All right, let's it gets easier.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
Good
it
thing.
gets so much easier. Let's go to the Churchill Downs Grade 1 on the dirt, race 10, 4:31 p.m. Um I this is one of the tougher dirt races of the weekend. And that's why I'm hopeful this, if you're right about, and you can narrow down selections, not only are you gaining value in your ticket construction, you're also probably going to gain a lot of value in terms of what the payout's going to be, because I think there's a lot of ways to go, especially in these first two legs here. In this one, I'm kind of going with some outsiders. Mr. Wireless to me, the number 4, a horse that has closed in the slow paces. Seems like the numbers are right there. And I also took a look at Minnesota Ready as well, as a horse that I thought might just sit the right trip. Uh, and since Tom Amos has got this horse and put it on the dirt, if you're expecting any type of wet track, I think this one has to absolutely get an upgrade. And quite frankly, I think this one really just wants to go maybe a little bit further, but it's going to certainly have becoming late and maybe a key if you're playing tries. So the 8 is maybe less a win play per se, but certainly when I'm playing the tries in this race, I'm going to key the 8 because I think it gets into the number at a price. I think you have to include the 2. The 2, if you're reading a book by somebody smart like Brad Free, not Mike Maloney, but Brad Free, you may want to look at the 2 Teano Twist as like a key for your try. But the 2, 6, 7, 10, 11 all have a shot to win to me. This is a wide open race, but I'm kind of tempted to fade Hoist to Gold. What are your thoughts there?
Um, First of all, on Minnesota Ready, I'm kind of with you there, but I'm really only interested if it's sloppy.
Yeah.
I totally agree that he moves way up on slop. So I think he's a must use if it does rain. Um, the way I really saw, and you also mentioned Mr. Wireless, and my nephew and I were at a Derby dinner last night, and I told him I thought Mr. Wireless was pretty live in this race, and he said, "Yeah, but what about the no Lasix? What about all his numbers are earned with Lasix, and now he
That's a
doesn't
fair
have it?"
point.
It's a great point. So I think the kid may be coming around. It may be like the student teaching the master after.
Is this the nephew I met?
Yeah, Duncan.
Don't,
He's a sharp
I'm
kid.
gonna tell you what. If if I die tomorrow, please reincarnate me as Duncan. Duncan is living a life that only me, Mike. I think you share the same thing. Duncan is the kid is just hitting it out of the ballpark.
The kid he has a great life in front of him, and he's a really good kid,
Yeah, he's a
and
good dude.
he's sharp, and he's what racing needs. He's a young guy that loves
But he
handicap,
gets it. He gets
loves
it.
the. Yeah, I hope racing just doesn't mistreat him too badly to where they send him to another gambling
Oh,
venue. But
don't worry.
hope,
Kentucky football will do that to him just fine.
hopefully that doesn't happen. So if that cools me a little bit on Mr. Wireless. I still think he's a contender, but if I save any money with him, I'm gonna thank Duncan and maybe buy him lunch. Um, the way I look at the race is, I think there's not a lot of speed in this race. It looks like two main speeds to me being Zozos the 6 and Hoist the Gold the 11. And when I see a situation like that, 7 furlongs out of the chute at Churchill, when I see that, I have to really give those speed horses a hard look, because I think that's a very favorable their position that they're in, especially the outside draw of those speed horses, which would be Hoist the Gold. I I don't totally trust him, Stu, but his best race is good enough to win this, and he's going to get a great trip. I don't see any bad trip that Hoist the Gold can get. He's going to break, probably be able to just look at Zozos and decide what to do. If Zozos doesn't break real sharp, he could go to the lead himself. If Zozos does break sharp, he can just get a comfortable stalking trip, move whenever he wants. So I think Hoist the Gold's guaranteed a good look at the race. And I like him slightly better than Zozos. But Zozo's going to get a good setup too, so he's a contender also. But what I came up with in that race was the 11 as an A, and using the 2, 4, and 6 as B's.
is
Um,
is Tejano twist really the key when you go to put your try or your super in for this race? Is Tejano twist just the key horse that you're just going to build this off of?
he is the kind of horse that I like, because I love his consistency. In this case, I worry about the pace a little bit. He's pace dependent. Tejano Twist is. He likes to come
Well,
from
I mean,
nowhere.
yeah, and that's true. My concern, just based off what you're saying,
Yep.
I'm unsure that he's caught a fast pace. And by that, I mean, when you look at the numbers that Zozos can run, if you look at the numbers that Hoist of Gold it has certainly run, potentially maybe they just get too far out in front. And Tejano Twist hasn't really had fast fractions to have to close into. And so I'm worried that this one is just really like he's going to run his race, but maybe he's just too far out of it by the time he makes his play, and really he's, but at that point, I'm kind of interested in keying him in third and fourth per se.
Well, I can't say that's a bad move, but that, and I may use him even a little higher than that. But when I key a horse, I want everything to be right when I lock
Okay.
into a horse, and that's all I'm saying is I'm always looking to pick holes in horses, and I look at enough races that my mindset is I want, when I bet Tejano Twist, I want there to be 4-speed horses in front of him, instead of 2. So, I'm not knocking Tejano Twist. He's a nice horse. I love his
He's
consistency.
steady. He's steady.
He's steady Eddie, man. Uh, and if the 6 and 11 hook up in this race and get involved with each other too early, he could get up. But this race is set up for the 6 and 11 to have a tactical advantage if they're ridden properly, and that's what I expect to happen. Is the closers are going to have to be clearly the best horse to get up and win this race, because I think the pace will be a little soft.
I'll have to ask you about a couple horses in here that I'm not sure what to make of them. Minnesota Ready and Mr. Wireless seem like, and you brought up a great point about the Lasix. Shout out Duncan again, coming through. Minnesota Ready, surface dependent. That might be a day of thing. Trackmate and Gun Pilot. First we'll start with Trackmate. I mean, this horse, D Wayne, he wins one race a year. You never expected him to, and he wins it at a price. He's always good for it. The old codger is still, kicking around. This horse, it was last time to time. I mean, third off the layoff, produces a really, really nice figure. And if you look at time form, the last race was, puts it in contention with anybody, on in this race. I'm unsure what to make of that.
It does. And I'm going to phone a friend here, and my friend is Duncan, and he's going to say that horse doesn't get Lasix either. And it earned all those numbers on Lasix.
Yeah.
So, I don't know why racing, it's confusing enough to handicap these hard races, but when you throw the on Lasix, off Lasix, stakes races, no stakes races, yes, Lasix on stakes races in Louisiana, no Lasix in Kentucky on stakes races. When you factor all that in, it makes it even more complicated.
Okay, so let's make it even more complicated with a horse like Gun Pilot, who's on Lasix, then off Lasix, but still on Lasix, but off it, but is running today. And here's the thing, last race was really nice.
Yeah, I think he's proven that he can run without the Lasix.
I really like Gun Runner as a sire is, you want to talk about Mark Pope incarnate. If Mark Pope was a horse, your thoughts?
I don't know. I'm hoping Mark Pope is Gun Runner. That'd be fine with me. We need.
By the way, we have to interject this.
All right.
What are you? I know you're the world's biggest John Calipari fan. You're a big fan. Already bought your Arkansas gear. What? Where are you at with Kentucky basketball? And we're taking a short sports break. Calm yourselves.
Here's my take on Kentucky basketball. Is when Cal first came in, it was, and I've grown up here, been here my whole life, so I feel like I'm entitled to speak on the subject. When Cal first came here, it was fun. having all these first round one and done dudes come through, and then watch them in the NBA. There was I have to admit, I kind of enjoyed that for a few years, but then the newness wore off, and I missed the third year juniors and the fourth year seniors and the dudes that, like, on senior night, I would cry when they came out for their last game. And I'm a little bit of a sap like that anyway, but you just felt like you knew them. You felt like they were your son or your nephew or something. And then time went on, and even, we rarely had those type guys. And then as time went on, we're just in a total frustration mode, because we're still the one doing the one and done thing, but we're not having much success. And then in the last couple of years, we can't even win a tournament game, whether it's SEC or NCAA. So I was ready for the change. I just think things went sour in the end, and good luck to Cal and Arkansas. And I don't know.
didn't
about,
apologize to you enough. This is my formal apology, my public apology. Friend of the program, Greg Campy, Coach Greg Campy, friend of the program. He sliced and diced you. You
I
hate
called
to see it.
report before that game. And what did you tell me?
All right, moving on to the next race. Race
No,
11 here. I
no,
forget. I have amnesia. I
not
had
out,
concussions.
not out to the coach, because he did he did a great job in that game.
No, he's a sweetheart. He's really he is a guy. He's been at Oakland for 40 years almost, I
Yeah,
want to say. So he took him from like a Division 2 to Division 1 AA to Division 1. And he's a guy that's just he's a sweetheart. He's fantastic.
yeah,
He's all about charity and the community, and he developed some players. He's had some players come through. It was nice to see them win. It was nice to see them win. And
yeah, and
at the same time, it knocked Calipari out of Kentucky, so it was a win-win for everybody.
yeah. I don't. If that's what it took, then I'm okay with it. Yeah, and it was fun to watch them play. The next game too. It was, the coach did a terrific job.
I'm gonna look it up right now. I know the Reds lost earlier. I'd ask you about the Reds, but we'll save that for the end, I'm sure. We
All right.
need your draft thoughts as well, so prepare those. Um Race 11, the Turf Classic, a mile and a eighth going around the green stuff, 5:27. You gotta love when the second to last race goes off an hour before the big race. This is the worst. This is the worst. And a couple years ago, the Rich Strike year, which ended up not being pertinent to anybody, I called you because I was alive in this period. I had an hour to wait, and I was alive to 15 grand. You remember me calling you, and I'm like freaking out because 15 grand to me is like, all right, well, some bills are getting paid. We're on easy street. Like, life is good. I ended up looking up Lowe's had some really great deals on rope that day. I'll just say that. But yeah, and this is that break. So assuming we're alive here, it was hard for me to get past. I'm very busy. The number 6, and especially Naval Power, and I'm Charlie Appleby stan. He's winning one of these races. He's winning one of them. And I think we'll start with Naval Power out to the outside. My thought is Master of the Seas is clearly the best turf horse in America right now. Just as it stands, I think at a mile or greater, Master of the Seas rules the waves. Naval Power was so good in that last race. And that was not the Maker's Mark mile was that wasn't a joke field. And that horse ended up going off 5-1, but I mean that was a solid field. Integration got buried in that field. And Integration's a nice horse, a horse that I think is for me a B in here. But certainly the 6 and 11, and always the other Chad. I don't want to give short shrift to program trading either, because that's a really nice horse as well. But I don't know. I'm very heavy on the 6 and 11 only, and I'm including the 6 only because I feel like this horse just has a kick that is pretty darn impressive. And you could do a toss up between that and the 5, but what are your thoughts on this race? I'm really focusing 6-11 as A's, 1-5 as B's, and then I think Farbridge makes the number potentially, as well as Never Explained has certainly had a really nice set of workouts. Um, and they've been kind of impressive on the workouts. So the 9 potentially as like a fill out your try in this race. But yeah, it's 1, 5, 6, 11 for me. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, we're kind of on the same page. I was willing to pretty much live or die with 1, 6, 11. And I guess the only reason that I'm moving the 1 up a little higher than you is I'm kind of a fan of Shug second off the layoff, and Gaffleon on the rail. I just, his last race wasn't that great, but it was on off turf, and I don't know exactly what we'll get on Derby Day, but I don't think it'll be quite as soft as what he got in the Maker's Mark, is the Maker Mile. So 1, 6, 11. The only other horse I'm thinking about using, and I know Program Trader's a little scary, but I'm willing to duck him, is the pace projector. And when you look at the race, it kind of backs it up. Has never surprised the 8 Loose on the lead. Doesn't look good enough, but I've just had it happen to me too many times that a horse gets loose and can hang on and pay a big price once in a while. So I'll use him maybe as a C and just play one small 50-cent ticket with my best ideas in the other races.
All righty. Let's go to the big show. And I'm not talking about Paul White. Shout out to the wrestling fans out there. Mike, by the way, what are you doing June 19th? I've got tickets right behind the commentators for All Elite Wrestling. It's got your name on it. If you're interested, if you want to come to Virginia, Fairfax, Virginia, we're going to be right behind the commentators for a whole night of wrestling.
I've never done wrestling, but if I was going to do
it
would
strike me as a guy who went to wrestling as a 8, 9, 10-year-old. You went to the local wrestling show.
They had wrestling. I remember like seeing the signs for it, but
Don't you have an autograph from a wrestler?
I have an autograph that my dad had.
You were showing it to me.
He went to auctioneer school with a guy named Dangerous Danny McShane. And then they were like buddies. They, like, after hours from the school, they would go carouse around the town. So they were boys.
Is Dangerous Danny McShane wrestling now? I don't know.
He obviously never made the big time.
Well, you could see the big time. Offers extended. Let's go.
I appreciate the offer. Ask the people in Fairfax if they've ever heard of Dangerous Danny McShane. Maybe they'll know him.
I mean, if you want to talk about household names, you start with Dangerous Danny McShane. Okay, let's get that out of the way. Let let's move on to the Derby here. And I talked about it, and please check me if I'm being ridiculous here. Fierceness is obviously if he breaks well, regardless of whether the truck's sloppy or has any give in it, probably the most likely winner, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so my thought is I can get very liberal in the previous races and single fierceness on a lot of tickets and maybe get alive to a $3, $4, $5 pick four. On some tickets, leave a little bit of room for some very liberal and maybe get very skinny and I mean just one or two horses in one of the races, an A and a B, and get very aggressive into fierceness. But outside of fierceness, and I think you mentioned it up at the top, you're going that way as well, that kind of thinking where 60-ish% of the money's going towards him in a pick four situation where we have 40% of our budget left. For me, I'm just gonna it's about 1,200 is what I've put towards just the pick four. So just doing the math, uh, I'll have a roughly about 500-600. Um, I want to whittle it down, but I'm thinking that I want to put it in the tiers potentially to try and get the ones that I think are more likely versus the ones that are less likely. And because the Derby is so tricky, we've talked about hard races, but I feel like the Derby is so tricky. If it's not fierceness, then it's going to be something really weird. And you want to be alive to that. I mean, if you catch a 15-1 winner for $1, that could pay exponentially and make your day. So even if you miss most of your bets, you're still coming out pretty good. What are your tiers in this race in terms of B's and or not even B's, but just like your second tier and your third tier of potential winners?
I'm going to play roughly 70% of my horizontal money through fierceness. And I'm going to play a little less than 30% of the horizontal wagers on Forever Young. And the little cracker that I have left will be my very best picks in the first three legs, and then a 50-cent spread with what I can afford to use in the Derby, the oddballs that I don't really think can win. That I'll go over them in a second if you want me to.
Yeah, please do.
Horses like 2, 4, 7, and 8. Sierra Leone, Catching Freedom, Honor Marie, and Just a Touch. Those type horses, I would be satisfied just to be live for 50 cents. But in reality, I probably won't be live to any of those unless all my top choices win. I'll probably just be live, hopefully. If things play out like they normally do, I'll probably just be live to Forever Young, and then I'll be pressed to Fierceness.
Yeah. And I have that kind of in the back of my head of, there's that like, I want to make a profit because this is, I let some buddies buy into my bet, right? And so I'm like, okay, well, I want to make sure they have a good Derby, right?
Yeah,
I
the
want to make
pressure.
sure they win.
you're living my life now, Stu.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you know, live with and work with a bunch of degenerate gamblers who have no idea about horse racing.
Well, when you're the point man,
Exactly.
you're going to grind on those tickets, because there other people's fortunes are involved. So I know that feeling exactly. And it's, you feel a little bit of pressure in those situations, but, uh, you know, the, the late pick 4 on Derby Day, it's, not going to be simple to hit. So, the way I try to approach things, even if someone else is involved, is I try to bet it the right way. I try to follow my principles, and if I hit it, that's great. But the question I'm going to ask myself after it's over is, not whether I hit it or not. I certainly hope I do, but did I did I stick to my principles? Did I play a smart ticket? And
Yeah.
if you consistently play smart tickets and put the odds in your favor, good things will happen. But it's easy to feel the pressure of, oh, I really need to hit this, and overbet or overspread. There's just, you're in gambling. You play a lot of mind games with yourself, and the thing that keeps me straight there is, what are my principles? What rules do I always follow, and make sure I follow those.
I want to back that up because I think what you're digging in on is really pertinent, especially for the folks that want to try and hit a nice little score in the Derby. We're not talking the super high five, $100,000 payout. We're talking hey, I made like $2,000 on the Derby, and then that's a cause for celebration, right? And you can certainly make that. Pick fours the rest of the year in any other race are not going to most likely pay out $2,000 with a horse that's in the last, if you get favorites, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, but Derby's special. I wanted to ask you about some of the horses. So we know about Fierceness, Forever Young. It's about time that one of these years, Thunder Snow, Dermasotogake, it's the Japanese horse racing program is getting there. And I'm right there lockstep with you. It's probably going to get there eventually. What do you like about Forever Young in this race coming into it, that makes you section it off from the others that are kind of more well known?
Well, here's the way I'm looking at it, Stu, and I'll touch on Fierceness just real quickly
Yeah,
to
please do.
just round it out. Uh, like everyone else says, he's the obvious fastest horse in the race. The thing that he hasn't done that I'm concerned about him doing, I lean toward that he will do it, but it's still a concern, is Fierceness has never been in a really fast pace and ran well. And I'm expecting the Derby to be a faster than average pace. So, and I don't think he's just going to break and go immediately to the lead. He may be that good where he's able to do that. But I'm expecting Dornoch to get sent really hard from the inside. There's 3 or 4 other horses with early speed in the race. Track Phantom Asmussen's talking like he may not really send him that hard. I don't know what to make of that, but the horse has a lot of natural speed. I just can't picture anything other than a faster than average pace. So that'll be the question in my mind for Fierceness. We know he has the talent. I don't really worry about him getting the distance. What I worry about is the pace is going to be hotter than what he's ever been involved in successfully. And I have some concerns that not every horse, not every good horse, will handle a fast pace like that and run his best race. So that's my concern with Fierceness. Forever Young, the Japanese horse, I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert on international form, because I'm not. All I really do in this instance is listen to people that are sharper about international form than I am, that I trust and respect. And those people are saying that Forever Young is talented enough to win an average Derby if he runs his race, if he adapts to American racing. So that's good enough for me that they think he shapes up talent wise. The angle that I'm playing is just kind of what you laid out, that Japanese racing has gotten good enough where I think their best 3-year-old is eventually going to win the Derby. I bet, full disclosure, I bet Derma Sotogake last year.
So did I.
And
I also bet Thunder Snow. Shout out Duke Matisse.
Yeah, I know. I know Duke was on
But
that horse.
that wasn't a bad bet, because both those horses turned into absolute monsters.
Well, in last year, in my opinion, Derma Sotogake got just eliminated at the gate, and he still nice move inside the race. And then his next race after a several month layoff was in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and he ran a really good second. So it kind of confirmed the idea that he classed up with the Derby horses. I think he did. I think he was just a victim of a bad trip. I'm not saying he would have won the race for sure, but he would have been a lot closer. And if he would have run his race last year in the Derby, Forever Young, instead of being 8-1 or whatever he ends up being this weekend, he might be 4-1. So I think we're still getting some value on the Japanese angle. And my handicapping of the race has the U.S. horses as Fierceness being way more talented. He's a little, I worry about the pace angle, but just talent wise, I think he's clearly better than the other American horses. And there's a group of about 4 of the American horses that all look the same to me. I can't really separate them. So I'm looking for, if Fierceness doesn't run, who can I go to besides having to spread with 4 other horses? And the Japanese horse, the Forever Young idea, really makes sense to me, because I think he classes up. He has a little tactical speed. He'll be in front of most of the American horses that I would be spreading with if I didn't use Fierceness. So it all kind of comes together and makes sense to me that he's the most likely upset horse in the Derby. So I'm comfortable. I know that you don't lock the race up with those two, but I feel like I'm betting my money more efficiently by just stopping with Forever Young and Fierceness than I am by taking it to a 6-horse spread, when I really believe that 11 and 17 are the 2 most talented horses probably in the race. Now, when it gets to verticals, that's a whole different discussion, and I'll bet those bets a lot differently than I'm betting these horizontals.
I definitely want to ask you about verticals, because verticals can pay pretty nice, especially in the Derby. However, you look at the 2, the 4, the 7, Sierra Leone, Catching Freedom, Honor Marie, same running style, project to be at different levels in terms of who's going to get the first crack at the lead. And my question is Sierra Leone, to me, watching him in the bluegrass, I mean, this horse was always in control. and I know the Bluegrass hasn't produced a Derby winner in quite some time, but Sierra Leone just looks like a very, very talented horse. Turn the foots there, can close into a slow pace, can close into a fast pace. But the two post is just, I get concerned that he's going to be so far back that he might just, you're going to be ducking, diving, and dodging wrenches and horses when you're trying to make that move. Whereas Catching Freedom, which I know has gotten a lot of love in the morning works, and the same with Anna Marie. I mean, a lot of people love Anna Marie as well. How are you delineating the most likely closer here? Because I mean, it's almost impossible because the trip is just so unpredictable.
I see that exactly the same as you do, Stu. That those are the three horses that I'm trying to decide between for most likely closer or most consistent closer, horse I can rely on to finish somewhere on the board. And I've spent a lot of given a lot of thought to that. And here's what I end up coming up with: if if Honor Marie if the connections were different, and I'm not trying to disparage Ben Curtis or the trainer. I'm just, I think you learn. We've had a couple of jocks and trainers
their first time in the Derby and
that have done well, but I'm
Mhm.
still not. That's still a concern for me, even though that's that we've had no experienced guys come in and do well the last couple of years. It's still a concern for me. So that makes it a little hard for me to go the Honor Marie route, although that's the horse, because I think he's going to be the biggest price of those three. That's the horse I would lean to if the connections were all equal. And Sierra Leone, I think, uh, from a win standpoint, I think he's going to be really overbet for some of the reasons you just pointed out. He'll have to be. He's a nice horse and he can win, but fair odds on him to me are 7 or 8 to 1 instead of like a solid second choice like he's going to be, because I think that trip could get, it could get tough down there. Dornock's going to lead from the inside, and Sierra Leone, it'll be real easy for him to just get shoved down on the rail, and all those horses trying to drop over to the rail to get before they get to the first
and
turn.
before you know it, you're 14 lengths back.
Yeah, if anyone wants to kind of get a visual of that, you could go back 2 years ago, and Mo Donegal had the rail.
Yeah, and everybody loved Mo Donegal.
Yeah, and just look at what he goes through in the run from the gate, and he doesn't. It's no one instance of disastrous trouble. It's just
A compounding of issues.
Yeah, it's just a chain reaction of a claustrophobic trip. So I don't know that that'll happen to Sierra Leone, but it could. So that eliminates him from me keying him, although I know he can win the race. So I'm going to end up with Catching Freedom as the horse I'm going to rely on,
working really well
to be in the Super. The connections are solid. He's working well.
I think Pratt is he's a jock that really understands the Derby and understands these large fields. And I'm kind of with you where I may bump up the 4 just a tad into that second tier. So if I'm looking at it, fierceness and then Catching Freedom, and I'm with you on Forever Young. I don't know what you're going to get, but it's exciting. It's it's provocative. It gets the people going. You know, Forever Young is just there, and there's unknowns, and especially in the field. If you're telling me Fierceness doesn't win in a field of, and this is not a great Derby field. This is not this. You know, we're not working with the 27 Yankees here. You know, this is a field that's pretty lackluster in terms of talent and accomplishment. And I'm with you. I mean, Forever Young to me seems like in that second tier, Catching Freedom seems like the best closer. And then I wanted to ask you about one last horse before we talk about verticals in this. Just a touch. I mean, the Bluegrass, I mean, that horse was visually impressive, staying on through just a hot pace, stayed on through the end, and acquitted itself really, really well against Sierra Leone. Uh, you know, this is a horse that's growing. This is only its fourth start. If you look at the time form figures, this horse is right in the mix in terms of potentially winning with a 120 time form. You know, if Fierceness, if you design the race in your head that Fierceness is going to sit off the pace, Just Touch should be slightly in front of him, no? And should have that first jump if you're letting Door Knock go, if you're letting Track Phantom go, which they only have one way to go, right? Or you let him just set the pace, and that could be an issue too. I get your opinion on Just a Touch though.
Yeah, he's the next horse that that I would use. I don't know. I'm just a little confused with him because he's the kind of horse in everyday racing that I'm always looking to bet on. A horse that was up in a fast pace,
Yeah.
but has other races that before that where he passed horses and showed a little versatility. And now I'm expecting him to be rated a little better, in this race. And if he were running in a weekend race that wasn't the Derby, that was a mile and an eighth, I would probably love his chances. But I really don't. I have a hard time evaluating him in the Derby because, first of all, I don't know exactly how they're going to approach the pace. And I don't know whether they're going to, like you said, send him, try to be really, really close. I don't think they'll do that, but they could.
For reference, Timeform
Yeah.
US does have the 8 on the lead, slightly ahead of the 12 and the 1 Door Knock, which
Yeah.
I think those three make up the first three to the half mile, but I don't know if the 8's leading the way.
Yeah. So I don't, that's what makes it so hard for me to evaluate Just a Touch, because if he's going for the lead and Fierceness is the horse I think he is, and Fierceness comes up on his outside down the backside and puts pressure on him, and then Fierceness is the real deal and he goes off and wins by open links, that puts Just a Touch in a terrible spot because he's trying to go a mile and a quarter, and after testing a horse that is maybe the best of his generation and getting spit out by him, it's tough to hold on and hit the board in that situation in the Derby. So that's my fear with Just a Touch. If he's a little more rateable and things work out to where he could maybe be the horse that's a couple of lengths behind Fierceness, and when Fierceness puts the other speed away, then he can move into the race and challenge. I would like that trip a whole lot better, but I just don't know, which trip he's going to get, if either. So he's a horse I'm going to use as a contender. I'm not going to use him in the horizontals, but when we get to the verticals, he's a horse I'm going to use as a filler in the spots, because he's definitely talented enough. I just don't know, I'm not picturing a great trip for him in the race, especially if it's a fast pace.
Let's talk verticals. We've been talking horizontals the whole time. Let's talk verticals for the Derby. A lot of money to be made, even if you have a favorite in there. I'm personally leaning towards tossing Sierra Leone. I really want to focus and try and get the second choice out of the top three. Just because I think they're, like we talked to, there's a lot of issues there. I'm leaning on fierceness, and I want to have, maybe 6x6. And you're talking about $1 try. You're talking about, what is it? Maybe
$30.
$100 super potentially.
Yeah, 30 for $1.20 on the super.
Yeah, $1.20 on the super. What is your key horse? Because we talk about key horses. You want to have that horse that you are 100% sure, and maybe it's not fierceness.
Mm-hmm.
It probably isn't, based on
what
Betting with an Edge, available on an Amazon reseller near you.
Yeah, not
for
not
$300.
Yeah, not very available.
The resale is just,
Yeah,
real low key, and Craig may hate me for it, but Milkowski was talking to me. He's like, I got a second copy of it, and those prices are pretty nice on the resale market. It's enough to get him a like Shy Egregious Alexander jersey. He's a
yeah.
big OKC fan. I said, what you should do is send it to Mike, have him sign it, and then put it up for auction at the PDJF or something, or
Yeah.
whatever.
I was at the SEC tournament in St. Louis when he had his coming out party. So
Shout out to Craig. And by the way, I got to
Craig,
tell you, when you join, and this is a shameless plug for our friends over at the Timeform US podcast, not so much Craig, but certainly when you talked with David Aragona, and Craig's there too, on that podcast, it is absolutely phenomenal. And they do a phenomenal job. Go check them out on DRF, YouTube, and certainly on the podcast, because every weekend they're doing some great stuff with folks like yourself. And you come on, and it's a really great listen. It's a great handicapping tool.
I second that emotion. It is a great handicapping tool, and they're the dynamic duo. Those are two
They
very
really
sharp
are.
gentlemen.
It's the odd couple, but it works.
Yeah, it does work. I listen whenever I can. We
Mike,
ready
vertically, yes, vertically. What is your key horse for this race? Because, and I had a friend of mine, JVD, John Van Dyne. Regular listeners will know who he is, but he sent me a ticket, and I said, why don't you just key a horse? Because it was like 2x3x8x8, and I'm like, why don't you just key a horse? This is a $290 ticket. Just key a horse. What's your key horse in this race? Because I know you found one.
Yeah. Well, I like to work. I like to do two things. I like to use all the vertical bets or multiple vertical bets, and kind of like blend them together to kind of illustrate my opinion of the race. So what I'll start out with is, I'm going to look at, like, who are my most likely winners. Well, it's fierceness and it's Forever Young. So and it's mostly fierceness. So I'm going to play some exactas with fierceness on top of catching freedom, and a smaller exacta, forever young, on top of catching freedom. And then I'll play a try with, I'll make a small box with the three of those, and then I'm going to press 11, 17 over catching freedom. Then I'll go into a series of bets in the try where I'm going to use catching freedom in every ticket because he's my key in the verticals. So I'm using him, fierceness to win, catching freedom second, and then horses like Honor Marie and Sierra Leone third. Then I'm going to move Sierra Leone and Dame Marie into second with and move catching freedom to third. And in that second slot, I'll also fill in a couple of contenders that I'm worried about, like Just a Touch. And I may even play a small one with Just Steel running second, because I think he's a kind of a value horse that has very little chance to win, but has a good chance to run in underneath, more like third or fourth.
Question on Just Steel, because
Yep.
I know the workout reports are not very kind to him working into the race. Some of the backstretch talk, which I'm sure that you're very well aware of. What do you do? How do you balance that? Is that just like, it is what it is. People are gonna like horses, dislike horses, etc. Or do you give a little bit more shrift to a horse like Just Steel, where it's like, is there a better horse like, to me, Domestic Product is a horse that I'm really excited about, and it's like, what do we do with that horse?
He's live for underneath also.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm kind of tempted to. He's the type of horse that I would be tempted to keep, especially in supers, if I'm playing a super.
Yeah. And to answer the first question first, what do I do when I hear negative comments about the physicality of horses or the way they're working for the Derby? I do pay attention to it. Two things on that is, number one, you'll hear that about Lucas horses, fairly often, more often than some of the other trainers. And, but he doesn't believe in backing off, and he's kind of always been that way. So, some of the horses don't travel perfectly. So I take into account that that's a Lucas horse that I'm hearing that about. But the other thing is that if I hear something negative about my key horse, then I'm less likely to key him. But when I'm working with the contenders and filling in slots like I am with Just Steel, I'm more likely to go ahead and include the horse.
Mike, I'll ask you the toughest question of all. What is your thoughts? And please feel free to expand upon this. It's a rain type racetrack. If we get rain, if we get some kind of weather, how does Churchill play? How do we adjust?
It can be anything, Stu, and I wish I had like a pat answer, but racing doesn't make things that simple. You can have Mind That Bird, where that day the rail was golden from race 1 all the way through race 14. Every horse that ran well was basically touching the rail at some point in the race. Then, and other times you can have a wet track where you can have horses making up ground on the outside. So I would watch for the rail to be helping if it gets sloppy. But that's more likely than anything else. But it's not anything that's locked in. You can have outside favoring tracks at Churchill when it's sloppy sometimes. And another thing to be careful with if it does rain is Churchill's main track dries out faster than any track that I know of. So just because it rained and the second race of the day, you're sure was a good rail, that doesn't mean when you start putting your pick 5 together that the 10th race is going to be like that as a certainty. It may be like that, but it may not be, because that track dries out quickly. And if the track starts to change, then the bias probably is going to change with it.
So I'll leave you with this last question. We look at Derby Day. We got all our bets set up. What is the biggest thing? And I know you addressed it in the previous podcast we alluded to. Please go check it out. Bet with the Best with Mike Maloney, Derby Day stuff, because Mike is my senpai, my guru when it comes to how do you bet efficiently. Rob, don't listen. Can I tell you, Rob? I sent a text to Rob, Mike, at Keeneland. I said, hey, key this 36-1 horse in your bets. I'm keying this 36-1 horse at Keeneland. Okay. I'm keying them in my bets. And I also gave him the 5 horse, which was like 15-1. I said, I'm keying the 5 and 7 in this race. Now, the 36-1 shot won, and the favorite came in second at like 3-1, right? Paid out like $300 for a $2 exacta. And I go, hey, you're welcome. He goes, what do you mean? You didn't tell me the favorite. So, yeah, it's Rob. So, I mean, it's just incredible. What do we do on Derby Day? What is the big thing that we need to keep in our mind betting wise? Because it can get really, and even for me, like, even though I have a set budget, it's Derby Day, and I'm like, well, we can go over the budget, right? I mean, we can pull a, we got a big antique sale going on next week, and we can pull that money, right? And you've talked about that in your book, where it's like, we can go to the ATM. I mean, that's a possibility. What do we keep in mind to make sure we're on track and we give ourselves the best chance on Derby Day to make a healthy profit?
I would say, Stu, it just first have a budget, set a limit to the most you can lose. Then have a plan. What are the races you like best? Where do you have your edge? If it's 3 horses during the day, then try to focus on the bulk of your money on those 3 races. And even if the first one loses, even if the first 2 lose, stay with your game. Be like I'm not much of a hockey guy, but I love Herb Brooks with the U.S. Olympic hockey team saying,
Good
play
American.
your game, play your game. And I repeat that to myself sometimes, because it's easy to get emotional and start chasing if we're behind, or start betting like a knucklehead if we're ahead. Just do what's right. Most of us know what good sound betting is. We just let our emotions kind of run away with us. So, I would say just play your game.
Speaking of playing your game, last question. Reds are currently 16-15. We're above 500. Okay. And we're 3.5 games out from the Brew Crew, who are horrific. What are your hopes for the Reds making the playoffs? And is that a positive bet? Because I'll pull up the odds right now. Okay.
I'm out of my pay grade, Stu. I went to YouTube TV, and where I'm not getting the Reds on there. I might have to subscribe to Bally
Reds are
Sports.
plus 500 to win the division.
Yeah, I'm not up on my Reds like I should be. I've only seen them a couple of games this year, but I'm a homer. I'm going to say, yeah, the Reds they got a great shot to make the playoffs.
You heard it here first, folks. Bet everything you have on the Reds to win the division.
It's like me asking you, are the Tigers going to have a good year?
Yes.
Yes, I know. All right, it's like asking for Natal. Can you bet on the Mets tonight?
Oh my gosh, this guy.
It's always yes.
I'll tell you what. I will give that guy this credit, and thank God. I mean, he hasn't asked you or me to join in the Derby palooza that he's doing, which, you obviously, you're come as you go. You're doing your thing. I take offense, and I'm going to talk to PTF about it, but he's doing a great stuff. Go check it out in the Money Media. If you're looking for some extra stuff, he's got tons of extra stuff. On Derby.
Buying hats, he's your man.
Oh yeah, if you're looking to impress at the nearest Clue convention, PTF's your guy. He's Colonel Mustard in the library with the wrench. I'll tell you what. Mike, I can't thank you enough. You're a mensch for sticking with us. Hopefully this helped you out. Hopefully you haters out there, you got my ticket, you got my thoughts. Hopefully we can make some money this weekend. Roberto certainly won't. We know that. I mean, he said he's betting 100 on just a touch. That's it. That's his horse.
Got a shot.
and that sums it up. For Mike Maloney, for myself. Go ahead.
All the best in the Derby, Stu, to you and your partners, and to Rob and Bombs Away Bob. May you cash many.
We know Bombs Away Bob likes multiple horses, and not a one is under 30 to 1. I'll tell you that right now.
My man, that's the way.
Bombs Away is all about value. But we will talk to you next week, folks. For Mike Maloney, go give him some love at Silk1900 on the Twitter machine. If you can take out a second mortgage, go get his book. You'll learn a thing or two. And also tune in next week. Roberto will be back. He'll be talking about, calling before you dig and natural gas. It'll be an electric show. Tune in for that. Until next time, take care, brush your hair, and we'll see you after a while.